I'm David. I've been taking daily cold immersions for the last 3 years now. And one thing that I really love is getting into the science, the research, comparing my practice with kind of the latest findings from the people that study this in detail. To that end, I've been looking at a paper called Health Effects of Voluntary Exposure to Cold Water, Continuing Subject of Debate. It's part 6. I've gone through a number of the previous sections, and you can go back in my timeline or look at the playlists, etc., to get to that. So we got to a section titled Cold Exposure, and at first I was like, why have they put this into a section all by itself? But this is like really important. This is probably one of the most important things that I've read about in recent times. I kind of get this, what they're driving at with this, and it's just something that I've kind of always based my practice around being safe. Basically, they're talking about something called the hunting reaction, which was observed by Thomas Lewis in the 1930s. He was looking at remote Norwegian fishermen and their reaction to the cold. And then over time, we've also looked at, for example, fishermen from the UK and compared the reactions. The hunting reaction is so important because not everybody has this reaction to the cold. When we don't have this process happening in our body, then we're putting ourselves at risk of, very least, cold tissue problems. Severe frostbite, things like that. When we immerse into cold water, it should trigger a response where we get what's called vasoconstriction. This is a complex reaction that centers on our hands and our feet, generally the surface of our skin. And what happens is that the blood vessels, which are allowing the warm blood to flow through the surface of our skin, they close right down. And at the same time, there is an activation of a specialized kind of blood vessel, the arteriovenous anastomoses. What these do is, they're like special pipes, not a great way to describe them, but they rapidly draw the blood away from the surface of the skin and keep it in the inner core. So we've got two things going on. The blood can't flow around the surface, and these special pipes also redirecting the flow of the blood away from the surface. This is important for what I hope are fairly obvious reasons, like when you put something warm into something cold, like a warm human body into the cold water. And if nothing else kind of changed within our bodies, then our blood would rapidly cool as it's passing through the surface of the skin, being super exposed to the cold. So it's a really smart reaction that the body has. In doing this, it maintains a supply of warm blood during that initial kind of stressful phase of the cold. And in a healthy response to cold water immersion, we're waiting for the body to catch up. And so for our stress levels to drop as we acclimatize to the cold, and also the adipose fat tissue activation. So the brown fat, which I talked about in one of the previous sessions, turns on and also starts helping to warm the body. After a period of time, a very complex, highly individual amount of time. We can't say with absolute certainty it's this amount of time. It just varies so much between people, and that is so important to understand. If you don't become aware of these kind of things, you can really hurt yourself in cold water, that's for sure.